So today, we're going to dive into what our source material calls a really profound choice facing all of us. And it's not just about what kind of rockets we build. No, this is a deep conflict of philosophies, really a tale of two completely different futures for humanity. And it all centers on two huge ideas: nuclear energy and our ultimate place out there among the stars. Let's just kick things off with this pretty provocative statement. According to our source, this quote from a major figure in the British scientific establishment isn't just some casual opinion. It's basically the opening shot in an ideological war over whether humanity is going to stay stuck here on Earth or if we're going to truly, finally, reach for the cosmos. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at those two opposing futures. Then, we'll dive into the case against going to space and the ideology the source claims is really driving it. From there, we'll pivot to the one technology that could change absolutely everything, nuclear power, and see how a new agenda is pushing it forward, all leading to this wild concept of the Astrospheric Man. So, right at the heart of this whole thing, the source material lays out this fundamental clash of wills. It's a choice, really, between two completely different views of what humanity is and what we're capable of becoming. So you've got these two camps, right? On one side, there's what the source labels the imperial view. It's this idea that we're basically limited to Earth, that space is just some costly, frivolous adventure for the super rich. Then, on the other side, you've got what it calls the American vision, a belief that humanity is this ever-expanding, creative force that's actually destined to spread out and colonize the solar system. All right, so let's dig into that argument for just staying put. The source really hones in on one key figure as the main voice for this whole Earthbound perspective. And that figure is Lord Martin Rees. And, the source really goes out of its way to list his credentials: Knight, Astronomer Royal, President of the Royal Society. The point it's making is pretty clear. This isn't some fringe opinion. This is the voice of the establishment. And this is really the core of the argument. And it's a practical one. It's basically, hey, our robots are getting so good, why would we ever send fragile, expensive people into space? The source presents this viewpoint as one that basically reduces human spaceflight to nothing more than an adventure sport, something best left to billionaires. But here's where it gets really interesting. The source argues this isn't just about practicality at all. It claims that this view comes from a much deeper place, a whole philosophy, an ideology of limits. And to really get a handle on this ideology, the source brings up this huge question that it says is haunting modern physics. Is there any real reason or purpose to our universe? And, what's our role in it? This brings us to what's known as the fine-tuning problem. The basic idea is that the fundamental rules of the universe, things like the strength of gravity or the nuclear force, are balanced on a razor's edge. I mean, if they were off by even a tiny, tiny fraction, poof, no stars, no complex chemistry, and definitely no us. The universe would just be a cold, empty place. So how do you even begin to explain that kind of ridiculous precision? Well, the source lays out two competing stories. On one hand, you have the multiverse theory, which figures like Lord Rees apparently support. The idea is that our universe is just one of an infinite number of others, and all of them have random settings. So we just got lucky. We live in one where the numbers worked out. In that view, there's no deeper meaning. It's just a cosmic lottery. But the other view says, no, wait. It sees that fine-tuning as actual evidence, a clue that there's some kind of purpose or reason baked right into the fabric of reality itself. So this huge philosophical divide, a random universe versus a purposeful one, it leads directly to a technological showdown. The source argues that if humanity does have some greater purpose, then the key, the one thing that unlocks it, is mastering the very forces that make the universe work: nuclear reactions. And this just perfectly illustrates the difference. I mean, the numbers are just absolutely staggering. A single pound of nuclear fuel has about 1,000,000 times more energy than a pound of the very best chemical rocket fuel. This isn't just a small step up. It's a total, complete game changer. So what does all that energy actually get you in the real world? Well, look at this. A typical chemical rocket trip to Mars, you're looking at 8.5 long months just coasting through deep space. But with a fusion-powered rocket, the source says you could slash that time down to just 1 month. And here's the real secret sauce behind that speed. It all comes down to propellant mass. With a chemical rocket, something like 3/4 of your ship's entire weight is just fuel. An old-school nuclear fission design like NERVA cuts that down to about half. But a modern fusion design? The source says the propellant could be as little as 3% of the total mass. Now that is the key that unlocks a whole new era of space travel. See, when you're not lugging around this gigantic tank of fuel, you can do something that chemical rockets just can't. You can fire your engines continuously. So instead of one short burst of speed and then a long, slow coast, you're accelerating for the first half of the trip and then flipping around to decelerate for the second half. That's how months turn into weeks, and that's how settling the solar system goes from sci-fi to a practical reality. And hey, this isn't just some science fiction fantasy. The source ties this whole technological vision directly to real-world policy, arguing that a major national push for nuclear power in space is already underway. Now, according to the source, this is laid out as a really systematic escalation. It starts with a national strategy, and then this hypothetical timeline shows it getting a major push with an executive order in December 2025, before really kicking into high gear with a big multi-agency initiative in April 2026 to make it all happen. And the goals of this initiative are described as incredibly aggressive. We're talking parallel development tracks to keep things moving fast, aiming to have nuclear reactors in orbit by 2028 and actually on the moon by 2030. It would all be driven by a competitive, milestone-based model. Kind of like what helped SpaceX bring down launch costs so dramatically. So, all of this, it leads to the source's big idea, this central concept for what humanity becomes next, what it calls the Astrospheric Man. And look, this isn't just about cool new hardware or building faster rockets, right? The argument here is that by embracing nuclear power and becoming a multiplanetary species, you're fundamentally rejecting this limited, kind of degraded, small view of what humanity can be. It's a psychological leap, a philosophical leap, just as much as it is a technological one. And this really brings us to the final stakes, as the source lays them out. On one side, you have what it calls the Empire's fear, this idea that a humanity that breaks free of Earth becomes, well, uncontrollable. But on the other side is the astrospheric promise, that by mastering this new kind of fire, humanity takes its place as a creative force, one that actually adds to and enhances the development of the entire universe. Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. Is building the rockets and the reactors actually the biggest hurdle we face? Or is the real challenge, as the source suggests, winning the battle of ideas first? A debate over who we are and what we're truly destined to become. It's a pretty powerful thought to end on.